really appreciate it.
Wow, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much. Music truly is that ladder to the soul. I am so honored to introduce my sister, Arya Badiyan. She is a champion of women. She did her year of service, traveling throughout Eastern and Western European countries in 91 and 92, sharing the tenets of the Baha'i faith. She went to Northwestern University for her undergraduate. She graduated from Kellogg. She got her MBA from Kellogg. And she spent a number of years at General Mills and brand management. She was classically trained as an artist in Florence, but really all of that all of her worldly accomplishments don't come anywhere close to the accomplishments of spirit and service that she has accomplished. She's helped create, I think, 6 companies. Many of them are in service to humanity. She and her husband co-founded a space called Harmony House there in Portland, or I should say Lake Oswego, Oregon. And her and her family traveled the world for 5 years, and she homeschooled her children. She has 2 beautiful children who are just thriving in this world and are just bright lights. She is a scholar. She has read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books about the spiritual meaning of life, not just in the Baha'i faith, but throughout, all scholarly works. And she is someone who is truly putting into practice the principles of what it means to truly be a servant to humanity. Most recently, her work in her paintings and addressing America's most vital and challenging issue of racism, inspired by the murder of George Floyd last year, has really launched into another service area that she has always been passionate about. And I think without further ado, I will introduce my dear sister, Arya Badiyan.
Thank you, Faith. You're going to be in trouble after that for going on and on.
Did I say anything that wasn't true? Is there anything that I said that was not the truth? I might have.
Everyone that knows you have rose-colored glasses, but I'm grateful for the introduction and thankful for this space. I really appreciate the starting with prayer and that beautiful healing prayer, because the theme that I was asked to speak on tonight is healing, and how the arts are a pathway to healing. And so I'm going to share a few pieces that I haven't really talked about much, because the three focuses of my creative work have been on healing from the diseases of racism, American exceptionalism, and sexism. And I haven't really in public space talked much about the sexism, but I will get into that, since that has been part of my own personal healing journey, and really illustrates how the act of creating art for me has been a means of personal and individual healing. Hopefully at the end we'll have some time for questions, and I'm gonna, I think, just run through my presentation. I like to sometimes have dialogue in between, but I think given the fact that I won't be able to see anybody when I'm presenting this, it'll be difficult to do that. So maybe we can leave that discussion to the end. But I think the whole purpose of my work is to facilitate discourse and to have these things be talked about, not just looked at. And so I hope that we can have time for discussion and free, sort of open-hearted response to how this work, you respond to this work in any way that you do. I hope we can share that at the end. So I will now share. So this is, I do sort of see my work as medicine, and that what I'm doing is trying to heal through my work. I would like to start by just grounding us in a few key ideas. So as James Baldwin says, the role of the artist is the same as the role of the lover. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you don't see. And art is a way to cut through narrative and dialogue and go right to the heart and see something that then you can intellectually understand and play with. And from the Baha'i writings, one should not ignore the truth of any matter. Rather, one should one give expression to that which is right and true. Justice must be sacred, and the rights of all the people must be considered. Desire for others only that which you desire for yourselves. And these two themes of truth and justice, and the role of the artist as uncovering that truth, to me, elevates the arts to the place of spiritual discourse and a medicine that can heal the ills that we have in our society today. So I'm going to start by sharing a series that is around this theme of destiny. In America, we have the concept of manifest destiny, which was sort of this vision of the settlers to do God's work and civilize this land. And most of us that were educated in this country were told a very narrow narrative about the destiny of this country and the crime and terror that was done in the name of that endeavor was really glossed over, and so much of that history needs to be scrutinized and revisited and retold. Because if we are to heal the ills of this nation, this is the starting point, is to look at the true history of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. This piece is called Hindsight Is 2020. As you can see, it's claimed as a crime scene. And what you have here is an often unknown history from one tribe of the hundreds of tribes that lived in this land, what happened to the Lakota. And so on the far left, you see the first treaty of Fort Laramie, 1851, that was written up between the new US government and the Lakota tribe. This was the treaty signed into law, defining the territory that would belong indefinitely to the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people. And you can see that this land spanned 7 different states and was defined in its borders, agreed upon that no white settlers would settle in this area. And when that became inconvenient because of the Western movement of the settlers from the east to the west coast, the treaty was changed. And the whole circumstance around that is one to, it's a long story. It was signed, but the circumstances under which the Lakota were forced to sign that were less than desirable. Let's just put it that way. There's all kinds of crimes crimes against humanity that occurred. But let us just take that treaty, the one 1868, which is the one that is still in place today. And that then you can see reduces the size of the land. And inside of that territory is what is, for any of you that have been to the Black Hills, that space is the sacred space of the Lakota, and that indefinitely was signed over to the Lakota people in acknowledgement that that was their land. Today, you see now in red the small reservations, one of which is Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in North and South Dakota. And all that is left after this time from that original intention is terror, the terror. Now, if you visit those lands that are legally the Lakota lands, you will see them occupied by U.S. settlers, and even that the mountain, Mount Rushmore, many of us don't know. I certainly didn't know this. I saw it as a landmark of our history, but the carving of those U.S. presidents into Mount Rushmore is a desecration of sacred and holy land of the Lakota people, and this is a crime scene in this very moment. The next three portraits I'm going to show you are of what you might like to think of as the founding fathers of this country. While they are, just contemporary from the 1800s and forward, they represent a very long legacy of the dignity, nobility of the original peoples of this land. The spiritual teacher of the Lakota people is known as White Buffalo Calf Woman, and she brought 12 core principles, 3 of which I will talk about. And you can see through the lives of these great elders, great ancestors, which saw themselves as the ancestors of all the peoples and all of the life of this planet. So we can look to them to learn these teachings. This is Nicholas Black Elk. Some of you may have read Black Elk Speaks. He was a medicine man of the Oglala Lakota people, born in 1863. He fought alongside his cousin Crazy Horse in the Battle of Little Bighorn and survived the Wounded Knee Massacre.
I was in the kitchen waiting for you. I didn't see you. When I finish, I will call you.
The first piece, he said, which is the most important, is that which comes within the souls of people when they realize their relationship, their oneness with the universe and all its powers, and when they realize that the center of the universe dwells Wakantaka, the great spirit, and that this center is really everywhere. It is within each of us. This is the real peace, and the others are but reflections of this. There can never be peace between nations until there is known that true peace, which is within the souls of men. This is a portrait of Crazy Horse. He was a valiant and noble resistance fighter of the Oglala Lakota people. He defended his people from the illegal land encroachment of white settlers. And he said, "The red nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world, a world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations, a world longing for light again. I see a time of 7 generations when all the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. In that day, there will be those among the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding of unity among all living things, and the young white ones will come to those of my people and ask for this wisdom." What Crazy Horse speaks to is an embodied knowledge. Those of us that come from the Baha'i tradition know that there is a prophecy in our teachings that America will play a critical role in leading all nations towards peace and oneness. And the Lakota have this knowledge embodied. They have been living with this knowledge. They have this saying, Mitakrio Yasin, all are related, all my relatives, and see all people and all of nature as one. This is a portrait of Pete Ketches, our friend, my sister Faith. This is her grandfather. Pete Ketches was a medicine man of the Oglala Lakota people. He brought the sacred practice of the sun dance back to the people when it was outlawed and punishable with 10 years imprisonment. He said, Wakantaka, the Great Spirit, made me as I am. And when I want to serve, I give it all that I have. I wanted the Great Spirit to bless this pipe. By blessing this pipe, I wanted him to bless me too, so that this pipe and me would be like one. That whatever I did with this sacred pipe, the Great Spirit would listen. Many times throughout my life, I asked the Great Spirit to do something that is almost impossible. But being humble, being lowly, feeling unworthy, he grants me what I ask of him. This is what makes me a medicine man. And last in this series, I'd like to share this portrait of Peter Ketches. This is the son of Pete Ketches. He was a 38th generation medicine man. And, you know, this piece is an invitation to find the greatness of our country, where it can, the only place that it can be found, which is in the history of our ancestors and the indigenous people, whose legacy goes back to the beginning of time in this land. And when we ask ourselves, you know, what would it take to make this country great again? It is to look to and center the voices and the stories of our indigenous Native brothers and sisters.
Thank you for being there. I love you.
The next series is Liberty. This is inspired by the desire to, and my own journey in finding the truth, realizing the truth of the ways in which the beautiful vision of liberty in this country has not been universally applied. This painting is called Liberty, Enlightening the World. And there's a really special story for me about this painting. It was the first in this whole series of work that you're seeing today that I did. And I was, you know, I live in Portland, Oregon, and the white community here in Portland really took up a mantle in raising awareness and going out to lend a voice and focus attention on the injustice that still on a daily basis afflicts our African American brothers and sisters. And as I was really mourning and deeply touched and saddened by what I saw happening, some of which, because I am a white woman, I have not had to live through this reality on a daily basis. But for many of us, our eyes were opened even further. You know, there's a beautiful analogy in the Baha'i writings that the Black people are the pupil of the eye of humanity, through which the world can see. And without that pupil, we are blind. And so in a way for me, being able to see this country and the structures and systems of this country through that pupil of the eye, I was able to see much more. And I wanted to, again, the theme of this evening is art as healing. And so really this painting was a very personal journey of healing, that pain that I felt. To be honest, I didn't think I would ever show it publicly. I was very private about creating it because I wasn't sure at the time what my role as someone who was not Black would be in using my voice, lending my voice to the cause of equality and racial justice. And so I painted this for me and to work through the emotions that I was going through. I wanted to show sort of or convey for myself the hope within this darkness, and the image of liberty, Lady Liberty, this embodiment of what it means to be liberated, came to me as a beautiful Black woman, and hear those words, "We the people." She is standing before this crowd, leading everyone forward, and it is a crowd of millions of Black and brown lives that have been unjustly treated and lost and killed over the 400 years of history of this nation. Yet she looks with vision and hope in paving a new future. And as I was painting this painting and started to tentatively show it to a few people, I learned the story of the Statue of Liberty. And this next piece tells that story. In fact, the Statue of Liberty that we think of as representing immigration and a welcome to our shores was originally commemorating the emancipation of the slaves. It was a gift from France to the United States to commemorate emancipation. And in the initial design of the statue, Lady Liberty was holding broken chains. And it was subsequently changed and the story was lost. Those of you that know Dr. Joy DeGruy, she was actually instrumental in having that truth and reconciliation told. In 2019, the true story of the Statue of Liberty was acknowledged in the Liberty Museum. And so this Liberty and Justice for All is named Juneteenth, after the date June 19th, 1865, which the Black community embraced as a day to commemorate the end of slavery. It was when some of the last of the slaves in Galveston, Texas, were freed by federal agents because they were still being kept illegally enslaved. Sorry. There we go. I'm not sure what's happening with the slides. Well, technical difficulties aside, Liberty leading the people. The last in this particular series, Lady Liberty is this composition was taken after Delacroix, and the depiction of liberty in the French Revolution. And so here I have that same Black Lady Liberty standing atop the mountaintop, and looking to the promised land and leading this country and the nation forward. And behind her are the words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that Black lives matter, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men." As you can see from my paintings, one of the things that I really try to do is, lean into the patriotism and the noble and lofty ideals of our country, but then ask the question, what would it take to make that true? And so in order to truly, have this vision, this beautiful vision that that our country was founded on, in order for that to actually be true and not a lie, we need to recast that in a way that will take us to that destination. And it is particularly through the vision of Black women that we will see the future and the destiny of this country. And now I'll tell a few other stories about some Black heroes. Here is Rosa Parks, an activist in the civil rights movement who played a pivotal role in the Montgomery bus boycott. Behind her are the words that she said, "I would like to be known as a person who is concerned about freedom and equality and justice and prosperity for all people." Today, we know her as the mother of the civil rights movement, and her nonviolent resistance set off a series of events that changed the world. When she spoke of her refusal to move to the back of the bus because of the color of her skin, she said, "When I made that decision, I knew that I had the strength of my ancestors with me." This is Harriet Tubman, who was responsible for rescuing over 70 slaves. Her words, "I was the conductor of the Underground Railroad for 8 years, and I can say what most conductors can't say. I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger. I have heard their groans and sighs and seen their tears, and I would give every drop of blood in my veins to free them." This is a portrait of Nat Turner. He led the most effective slave rebellion in American history, and that set off a ripple effect across the South, paving the way for the Civil War. Because he fought for his freedom and engaged in bloodshed, he's often been demonized in our history books. But if you really want to understand the truth of these stories, you really have to dig in deeper. And one of the things that I feel illustrates the necessity of his actions is when you look at how he and his family were treated by those that claim to be their owners. This is the will of Benjamin Turner, who was the slave master of Nat Turner. And you can see the horror of this, the dehumanization. "In the name of God, amen. I, Benjamin Turner of the county of Southampton and parish of St. Luke's, being in sound mind and memory, do make this my last will and testament in manner and form following. First and principally, I bequeath my soul to Almighty God who gave it to me. And for the worldly goods that I possess, I dispose of them as follows. Item first, I give and bequeath unto my loving wife, Elizabeth Turner, 1 Negro woman nanny, 6 cows and calves, all the plantation, 1 grindstone, a pair of chair wheels, 1 horse, hard money, 2 feather beds and furniture. I also leave to my wife, Elizabeth Turner, deserving the following property: 1 Negro slave, Abraham, Bridget, and Sylvie. Item second, I give and bequeath unto my loving son, Samuel Turner, the following Negroes: Sam, Nat, Lida, Nancy, Drew, Thane Minor, Alec, which he has got in his possession to him and his heirs forever. In retaliation for the insurrection, hundreds of slaves were executed. Laws were passed prohibiting education and further restricting the rights of Black people. Turner was hanged, his body was skinned and dismembered and used to make souvenirs. It is by learning the truth of these stories that we can heal this nation. Emmett Till was 14 years old, lynched in Money, Mississippi, for allegedly whistling at a white woman. Rosa Parks, when she was asked to move to the back of the bus, she thought of Emmett Till, and that's what made her decide to be still. Behind his portrait are the final words of civil rights leader, Representative John Lewis. Though I am gone, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. After many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on. Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rayshard Brooks, Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor. You must also study and learn the lessons of history, because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. These are a series of portraits that I have done to honor and commemorate the lives lost to police violence. Many of the portraits that you've seen, these ones here and the educational ones, I have put into the public domain for use by educators and activists. I'd like to take a moment of silence in their memory. So this series, I mentioned that I would talk about some of the work that I really haven't spoken much about publicly. This series is called Alchemy, and it is really a depiction of that dark night of the soul, where our, those of us that take a spiritual journey inevitably reach that point that, the darkest pit from which we then emerge like a phoenix and are transformed. And for me, these pieces speak to what it means to be a woman today in this society, the ways in which the narratives that are passed down over generations. I come from not too many generations ago, 4 generations ago, my great grandmother was married at the age of 9 to an older uncle, and against her will, and she ended up running away at the age of 14. This oppression that we need to eventually, I hesitate sometimes talking about this in the company of men, because I don't want what I'm saying to be taken in a way that I think some of these discussions can become polarizing. And we know that souls, or at least this is part of my tradition as a Baha'i, that our souls have no gender. And so we carry both of those. So this is a human condition, but that is the way in which I can personally relate to oppression and healing that has had to take place in my own life, because I have felt that as a woman. This piece is called Rebirth, and you can see the final piece on the left, and on the right is the layers of its evolution. Here is that depiction of that kind of hopeless moment at the bottom of the pit, and layered on top of the painting is really in a frenzy when I was working through, and this is how art very personally is a form of healing, as I was working through these emotions and trying to, there are some healers, traditional healers, that will say that any trauma that we go through is actually stored in our body, and we need to get it out so that we can move past that and go into healing. And art has been a really great tool for me in that journey. So I first painted this first layer and let it sit for quite a while until I was ready to write down those narratives, stories, and histories that were in effect my prison, the prison that I felt I was trapped in, was created, welded from my own stories, my own narratives. So I wrote all that down and then created these prison bars out of that. And the next piece in this series is sort of the next stage after that darkness, is really this repentance, or kind of a calling on spirit to bring light into the darkness. And here you can see that sort of fetal position in a state of submission and prayer, with the prison bars starting to melt and transform into a temple. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. This is where you can find me on the web. There's more work there. I have a short film as well, if you're interested in this topic of women and transformation, that you can see under Alchemy on my page. So hopefully now we can, I invite you to really discourse, because this is just one part of the conversation. And the other part of the conversation is what is happening within you and how people respond to this work positively as well as negatively. I know that there are images here that like most artists try to speak their truth, and that truth can be provocative in some ways. So I invite you to really speak freely and openly if you have any comments or anything you'd like to share. Thank you so much.
Before I thank you, I just wanted to ask Grace, our Cameroonian sister, to comment. We are soul sisters, and we are physical sisters the way that you and Faith are. So Grace, unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah. Is it Badiyan?
Arya.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I really love it. And I'm so happy that I have learned a lot more of what. So I will actually, I'm sorry that I came a bit late, but I think I would like to maybe get the notes from Furus. Furus, thank you so much for inviting our dear sister. And I'm so grateful, and I really enjoyed it. And I'll learn more. I'm so happy that I've learned more about the slavery and much more. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Professor Shayo, you know that you will be the next person. So, so you know the sequence. Go ahead.
The sequence. Yeah, thank you so much, Arya, for the talk. It's very powerful, and I think your art is amazing. And I always have the impression that when artists make their art, there are a lot of stories inside, and they might be hiding a lot of secret things inside, but then people who know them or who know this thing well, they will appreciate it. And thank you so much for sharing all this, how you create this art and all this story. And I will appreciate this art in another lens now, I think. And I think it's very, thank you so much. It's very healing. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question, Arya John, for you. I just wanted to say the first time that I heard Arya talk about this, I cried the whole session. And then I started to email her and ask her to speak at our gathering for the past 4 months. So I feel very privileged to have had you here, and I'm you know, it's possible for me to listen to you for the second time. But my question is, do you think that all these atrocities could be healed? Because we have inherited a culture and a history of injustice. Do you think this injustice could be healed?
The human spirit is so resilient. You know, I mean, I had the privilege of spending some time on the Lakota Pine Ridge Reservation with my sister Faith. And, you know, if you look at what the indigenous people have suffered, they were attempted to be exterminated, mass genocide, duplicity. They were, you know, given poison blankets to sleep with. They were systematically, sorry, there's noise in the background. I hope it's not too distracting. Hold on one second. Okay. They, you know, there was an agenda by the government to remove indigenous culture and language, and by the Catholic Church, the residential schools in the US and Canada that, you know, were where the Native Americans were forced to cut their hair and not speak their language. And yet you meet especially the Lakota elders who have, you know, all of these generations of pain and trauma. And Faith, I'm thinking of Quincy, and they just still live and believe their principles, which is the white man is our young brother, doesn't know what he's doing, you know. The economic system of the white man is not how I live. We gift each other whatever is needed. We take care of each other. And so you look at that resilience, and it with all that oppression, it hasn't gone away. The same thing with our Black brothers and sisters. The strength and resilience of the Black community is incredible. And so, yes, I think that this healing is inevitable. What is required, really, from my perspective, in order to affect that healing, is for those of us that are white and Persian and every other, every other non-Black or brown color of the spectrum who have, disproportionately benefited from these unjust systems. When we can start to really look closely, educate ourselves, tell the truth, and heal that wound which is within us, and center the voices and the knowledge and wisdom of our Black and Indigenous brothers and sisters, that is how we're going to achieve that destiny that we're promised, that this country will be critical in bringing about world peace. And so, yes, I think the human spirit is so resilient, and the answer is right in front of us. Open our eyes and look through the pupil of the eye and learn. Really, I always thought, because I believed in oneness, I always thought oneness was something that we will discover in the future when we all come together. And yet, if you get to know the Lakota, they have lived with a knowledge of oneness for thousands of years. And so these things are not new concepts. They're truths, spiritual truths that we have forgotten. And the way to remember them is to move into spaces, create spaces where we can learn these things.
Anyone else would like to comment? Pema Khan?
Please don't put people on the spot. I feel so embarrassed. I know.
These are my friends, don't worry. I'm just to them, yeah.
One thing popped in my head as I was listening and enjoying the presentation very much. Pupil of the eye does not only give us vision, only seeing the world doesn't come through it. Essentially, if you go to the more basic level, light comes through. And if we use Egon's terminology for light is enlightenment. So I just thought that, wow, our African American brothers and sisters are responsible for enlightening the rest of us, and that is amazing. That's a huge responsibility and something to be grateful for. So
that's beautiful. Thank you. So well said. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Professor Sayu, nothing else? Then they will tell me that I'm putting you on spot. Just smiling.
Oh, well, I'm just so grateful.
May I
Dr. Ziai,
ask a question? Yes.
please.
Thank you very much, Arya, for this beautiful work, converting human emotions into paintings and making them even stronger than what they actually are. Towards the end of your presentation, if I remember right, you had a scene where there was one of these prayer books, exactly like what we have, this leather work things, and you convert the pillars of a prison with the power of prayer into the pillars of the temple. Did I get it right?
That is a very, yes, you're clearly a professor and art critic. But no, that absolutely, that was the intention. And yes, that the prison becomes the temple. And yeah, that is inspired by the house of worship in Wilmette, that lattice work, which you
Right.
might
Yeah.
sort of evocative.
You know, one of our professors, Dr. Rosa, he always used to teach us back home in Iran that we are not human beings, we are human becomings. That is why you go to school, that's why you get prophets of God coming to teach you. So when you say we are resilient and we are going to change, of course, if that was not the case, why all of this? Why this fireside?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing. It's so good to see both of you.
Arya, could you talk a little bit about your process as an artist? What happens when you create?
It's an interesting question. I think I'm, my art is not my livelihood, and so I think, and I wouldn't be able to make it my livelihood because it's really important to me to the way that I work with art is in response to a spiritual impulse. And in order to have it be a livelihood, I would have to constantly produce. And so I haven't been able to do that. So my process is very much based on the impulse of the spirit. I am classically trained, and I do spend time drawing tedious sketches of casts like the one that you see back here as like practice. It's part of the Italian Florence School of Art, and so I do that. But when I make a piece of art, generally it is because there's some impulse that is arising within me, and the only thing I can do with it is make something. It's almost like I need to get it out. It feels like a spiritual pregnancy, I guess, and something that wants to be delivered. And so often when I have intense emotion, that will happen. And sometimes it just like I did show in here a painting that I never show. It was of Abdul Baha, the master, a portrait that I did. And that one, I didn't, again, it was a compulsion, and I did it in maybe a day. It came out very quickly, and I didn't want to show anybody because it's one of those things, he's a very sacred figure in our faith. And I knew that it's permissible to make a painting of him, but you'd really want to make sure it's dignified. And so I had a certain measure of trepidation, but it was just something that came into me and I needed to do. And so that's how my art, emerges these days. I don't know if I answered your question about process, but a lot of times it's very quick. Sometimes I like with the painting of a few of the paintings that I showed, pieces were missing. So I'd get to the first stage, and I like the one of the prison of self. It took, I guess, maybe even like 8 years from first painting it, the first layer, to being able to finish it. And so I just put it aside, knowing that when the right time came, it would emerge. And it was partly to my process when I was ready to move through that, move through that emotion.
Thank you.
What a question, Faith. What a question was that? Thank you. I would like to welcome Shole Boyle. We love you and we sympathize with you for whatever has happened, and thank you for sharing tonight with us. We really appreciate it, Shole.
Thank you so much for your warm welcome. It lifts my spirits to be with you right now.
Thank you.
Please accept our condolences.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Friends, may I ask you to unmute yourself, because I have a question that I really need emotions as an answer. May I ask you, Professor Shayu, could you kindly unmute yourself, please? Everyone else. Would you agree with me that we should invite Arya again for another presentation very soon? Can you address this?
For part 2.
Or two. Thank you. Thank you. What do you think?
You've seen most of my work, so I don't know what more to share. I could bring in my sisters, actually. Faith and Laura Ketches. Laura is a descendant of many of those great elders that I showed you. And she really embodies that knowledge of the Lakota. In fact, you saw that phrase that I said, that in a future day it will come where those among the Lakota will have this wisdom and the young white ones will come to learn from them. So Laura is one of those people, and I would recommend that she and Faith, who has been doing, Faith has her mother has lived on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation for 30 years and was married to Peter Ketches, the medicine man, and she's doing incredible work along with Faith in documenting, because the Lakota is an oral tradition, but many of those stories have been lost, and so they've been documented in 400 ancestor stories and a whole curriculum for Lakota studies that builds around those stories of their own history, building skills and abilities for young Lakota in their own spiritual history. And this is being taught in all the schools in Pine Ridge, and Faith has been working with those children and other teachers in sort of reclaiming that history and making that centered. So that is a beautiful, if you'd like to know more about that, I would highly encourage a session about what is happening on Pine Ridge these days.
I would also share that, when Arya talked about the portrait or the piece that she did on Crazy Horse and what she just mentioned about the 7 generations, it's really incredible with the Lakota. We can actually, Laura, who she just spoke about, her children would be that 6th or 7th generation of what Crazy Horse spoke of. So actually, like, by Laura and Arya coming, and myself and others coming together, we're actually fulfilling that prophecy of what Crazy Horse spoke of, 170, 80 years ago. So it's pretty incredible to see how spirit world is really guiding us all.
I couldn't wish for more. So maybe we can find a date, and then I can email Arya Jan and I would let others know, because only tonight many people were deprived of sharing this with us. So Arya Jan, you would be able to give me a date when I email you. I'm just trying to put you on spot in front of all these
Of course,
people.
yes,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to do this healing work.
It's wonderful. That's wonderful. What a beautiful evening this was. Thank you
so
very much. Friends, would you like to add anything or ask anything or say anything?
Just thank you for organizing this.
Yes, thank you so much for organizing. And it sounds like you do this all the time. So I haven't had the ability to attend other ones, but thank you for creating these spaces for people. It's so important.
I wanted you to know that we had power outage all day until half an hour, and I was having a heart attack, and I left it in the hands of God. So I said, it's okay. I mean, Arya will blow everyone's away, so why should I worry? I'm so glad that I'm seeing everyone's faces. Thank you for sharing this beautiful evening with us. Sholajan, we are with you and we love you, and we're very sorry.
Thank you, Furuzjan. I am just so overwhelmed with the love and devotion that everyone has been showering upon me on Charles's passing. And I have to thank Faranaz, my sweet friend, who's just sent me an email, but I've been so, there's so much to do right now that I've only just saw her message. So I actually missed the entire presentation that would have been very dear to my heart, since my own daughter is Indigenous. She's Métis from Canada, and really my whole family here is First Nations, Indigenous, and very close to my heart. And I've met Kevin Locke, Patricia Locke, and Vanya as well when they came to Australia. So it's all very close to my heart, but I missed the whole thing. So I sent you my email. If you'd be kind enough to send me the recording, I'd be really grateful, Furuzjan.
Thank you. I would really appreciate it if the friends could put their emails on chat, and so I will email you the recording. And also, I think because Shola was not here and her family is so much close, they're so close to the Indigenous people, maybe Aryajan, it would be very kind and nice of you to give this particular fireside one more time other than the other ones. What do you think?
Sure, if you'd like the same one again, no problem. No problem.
Oh, you're so generous. You're just a sweetheart. Yeah, I see the features. I see your traits. Beautiful. Thank you.
I don't have the heart to say goodbye because the sessions tonight was so powerful, was so beautiful, and it addressed such a very important subject. And this is a subject that has been very, very dear to my heart as a Baha'i, Persian Baha'i, who comes from Iran and who have heard stories and shared history about the atrocities that happened to many people, including the Baha'is in Iran. So what you said, it's as if it warmed my heart. Thank you, Arya Jan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Please say hello to your parents.
I will. They'll be so excited to hear that. Have a wonderful evening.
With heavy hearts, we say goodbye to you.
Exactly. Farah, would you put your email address, and the friends, could they put their email address for me?